The call came on a Tuesday morning while I was still in my scrubs, standing in the hospital parking garage with my keys in my hand and my feet aching from a 12-hour shift. "Is this Sarah Callahan?" The voice on the other end was calm, professional, the kind of voice that belonged to someone who delivered difficult news for a living. "Yes," I said. "Who's calling?" "My name is Douglas Mercer. I'm an estate attorney with Mercer and Associates in Columbus. I represented your grandmother, Patricia Callahan, before her passing. I'd been trying to reach you for several weeks." I leaned against my car. My grandmother had passed away 3 years earlier. I'd cried at her funeral, stood at her graveside in February sleet, and then watched my mother accept condolences from family friends, while my brother stood beside her looking like a catalog model in his new wool coat. I hadn't thought much about her estate. My mother had handled everything, the way my mother handled everything that involved money or decisions or anything that could be turned into an advantage. "Okay," I said slowly. "What is this about?" There was a brief pause. "Ms. Callahan, I think it would be better if we met in person. Would you be able to come to our office this week?" I almost said I didn't have time. I almost said I was too tired, too busy, too used to things not working out in my favor to bother getting my hopes up. But something in his voice stopped me. Something careful and deliberate, the way someone sounds when they're holding information they know is going to change everything. "Thursday," I said. "I can do Thursday afternoon." I didn't sleep well for the next 2 nights. Let me back up, because you need to understand what my life looked like before that phone call. I'm 29 years old. I've been a registered nurse for 5 years. I rent a 1-bedroom apartment in Columbus, Ohio, about 20 minutes from the hospital where I work, 3 12-hour shifts a week. I drive a 2017 Honda Civic with a cracked rear bumper that I keep meaning to fix. I have about $4,000 in savings, which sounds like something until you realize that a single medical emergency would wipe it out completely. My brother Ryan is 32. He has a master's degree in business administration from Ohio State, which my parents helped pay for. He bought a house in Dublin 2 years ago, 4 bedrooms, a finished basement, a backyard with a deck, and my parents gave him the down payment as, and I'm quoting my mother directly here, a little boost to get him started. He drives a BMW. He got promoted to director of operations at a logistics company last year, and my mother called me specifically to tell me the news, even though I hadn't spoken to her in 3 weeks. I want to be clear about something. I don't hate my brother. Ryan is not a bad person. He didn't ask to be the favorite. He was just born second, and for reasons I spent most of my childhood and all of my adult life trying to understand, my parents looked at him and saw someone worth investing in, and they looked at me and saw someone who would figure it out on her own. I paid for my own nursing school through a combination of loans, 2 part-time jobs, and a scholarship I applied for 6 times before I finally got it. When I graduated, my parents took Ryan out to dinner to celebrate his promotion at his first job. My mother sent me a card with a $20 bill inside, the kind of card you buy at a drugstore. It had a picture of a sunflower on it. She wrote, "So proud of you, honey," with an exclamation point, like enthusiasm could substitute for presents. The first time I really understood how different our lives were, I was 22, standing in the kitchen of my parents' house during Thanksgiving. My mother had just finished telling me she couldn't lend me $300 to cover a gap in my rent. I'd had my hours cut at the restaurant and the timing was terrible when I noticed the new refrigerator. Stainless steel, French door, the kind with the ice maker built into the door. I asked when they got it. My mother said Ryan had picked it out. She said it like that explained everything. And I suppose it did. But here is the thing about growing up in a family like mine. You spend so much time trying to earn something that was never actually being withheld from you for reasons you could fix. I changed my major. I changed my tone. I stopped asking for things. I became the easy child, the low-maintenance one, the daughter who never needed anything because needing things had always felt like a transaction I couldn't afford. And all of that time, I thought the disadvantage was simply that my parents liked Ryan more. I thought it was emotional, personal, one of those painful family dynamics that therapists have names for. I had no idea it was also financial. Douglas Mercer's office was on the 4th floor of a glass building downtown. He was older than he'd sounded on the phone, maybe 60, with wire-rimmed glasses and the kind of steady, unhurried manner that made you feel like whatever he was about to tell you had already been verified 12 different ways before he opened his mouth. He offered me coffee. I accepted. He set a folder on the desk between us. Your grandmother updated her will approximately 2 years before she passed, he said. She came to me specifically because she wanted the changes documented carefully. She had 2 primary beneficiaries, you and your brother. She divided her liquid assets equally. At the time of her death, that total came to $480,000. I stared at him. $240,000 to each of you, he said, and he said it gently. The way you say something to someone you already know is not going to react well. I never received anything, I said. My voice came out very flat. I know. He opened the folder. Your parents were named co-executors of the estate. It was your grandmother's preference to keep it within the family, and at the time, there was no reason to believe. He stopped himself. The estate was settled 18 months after your grandmother's death. I received documentation indicating that both distributions had been made. Your brother's share was wired directly to his account. Your share was, according to the filings, distributed the same way. To whose account? He looked at me over his glasses. That is the question I have been asking for approximately 4 months. A routine audit of our archived estate files flagged an inconsistency. When we attempted to verify the receiving account for your distribution, the account number on record does not match any account in your name. It never did. The coffee was getting cold in my hands. I set it down because I didn't trust myself to keep holding it. Are you telling me my parents filed fraudulent estate documents? He was quiet for a moment. I'm telling you that the account your share of the inheritance was directed to does not belong to you. I am not in a position to tell you what your parents knew or intended. What I can tell you is that $240,000 was distributed from your grandmother's estate, and, as far as we can verify, you never received it. I asked him how long he had been trying to reach me. He said 6 weeks. He said he had called my parents first, as co-executors, to flag the discrepancy, and that my mother had told him I had received my distribution and used it to pay off student loans, and that I preferred not to discuss financial matters. He had then tried to reach me directly. I had received no calls, no voicemails, no letters. My mother had apparently not mentioned this to me at any point. I drove home in a kind of white silence. I sat in my parking lot for 40 minutes before I went inside. Over the next 2 weeks, I did the kind of research you do when you're not yet sure what you're going to find, but you're already terrified of it. I requested records. I asked questions. I called my grandmother's oldest friend, a woman named Estelle, who had been at every birthday and holiday for the first 20 years of my life. And she told me something that made my hands go numb. She said my grandmother had been very specific about the equal split. She said she had worried about it, that she'd told Estelle directly more than once, that she wanted to make sure I was taken care of, that she knew the way my parents operated, and that she had gone to an outside attorney specifically so it would be handled properly. She loved you so much, Sarah, Estelle said. She used to say you were the one who got the short end of everything, and she wanted to fix it. My grandmother had tried to fix it. I spent the 3rd week sitting with what I knew, because I needed to be sure before I did anything I couldn't undo. The facts, as far as I could establish them, were these. $240,000 had been distributed from my grandmother's estate into an account that was not mine. During the 18 months between my grandmother's death and the estate settlement, my parents had paid for Ryan's MBA in full, approximately $68,000. They had also contributed $45,000 toward the down payment on his house, purchased a new car, renovated their kitchen for around $32,000, and taken a trip to Portugal. They had mentioned at every family gathering for the following year as if it were the most casual thing in the world. $240,000. Stretched across 4 years of upgraded living, while I worked nights and weekends and ate pasta 4 times a week and told myself that struggling was just part of being an adult. I called Ryan. This was the part I had dreaded the most, not because I was afraid of him, but because I genuinely did not know what he knew. And I was right to be afraid of what I might find out. He answered on the 3rd ring, and I could hear his kids in the background, his daughter laughing at something. The ordinary sound of a life that had been built on solid ground. I asked if we could talk. He said sure, give him a second, and then the background noise faded, and he was quiet. I told him what I knew. I told him carefully, in order, without editorializing, because I needed him to hear the facts before he heard my feelings about them. I told him about Douglas Mercer. I told him about the account number. I told him the total. There was a very long silence. Sarah, his voice had changed. I had no idea about this. I know you didn't, I said. That's why I'm calling you before I call them. Are you sure? Is the lawyer sure? He's been auditing it for 4 months, Ryan. It's not a mistake. Another silence. I heard him exhale. The MBA, he said. And it wasn't a question. It was him adding it up out loud. The down payment. They told me that they said it came from some savings account they'd had for years. Did you ever ask for documentation? He didn't answer that. He didn't have to. I need you to be honest with me, I said. Did you ever hear anything about Grandma's estate? Did they ever mention my distribution? They told me you'd gotten your share and used it to pay off your loans. That you'd moved on and didn't want to talk about it. A pause. I thought it was strange that you never said anything to me, but I let it go. Sarah, I'm sorry. I should have asked. I told him I wasn't angry at him. I told him that, and I mostly meant it, because the anger I was carrying was so specifically shaped to fit 2 other people that there wasn't much left over for anyone else. We agreed to meet at his house the following Sunday. We agreed not to call our parents until after we'd talked. The Sunday conversation lasted 3 hours. Ryan sat across from me at his kitchen table looking like a man who had just discovered the foundation of his house was built on something he hadn't examined closely enough. His wife Carla brought us both coffee and then quietly took the kids to the park, which I was grateful for. We went through everything together. The timeline. The numbers. The documentation Douglas Mercer had shared with me. Ryan had pulled his own records, his tuition receipts, the wire transfer for his down payment, a receipt his father had forwarded him for a furniture purchase that Ryan had thought was a gift, but now recognized as another line item in a longer accounting. They spent almost all of it, Ryan said, staring at the papers. Almost all of it, I said. Douglas estimates there's maybe 35,000 left in that account, based on the transactions he was able to trace. What do you want to do? I want to talk to them first, I said. I want to look them in the eye and I want them to tell me the truth. And then I'll decide what comes next. We called our parents that evening and asked them to meet us for dinner the following Saturday. My mother suggested a restaurant she liked, the kind of place with white tablecloths and bread baskets that get refilled, the kind of place she'd always chosen to have difficult conversations because she believed that public settings made people behave. I agreed to it. I had my own reasons for agreeing to it. The week between that call and the dinner was the longest of my life. I went to work. I took care of my patients. I came home and sat in my apartment and thought about 29 years of small moments that had looked like preferences and turned out to have a price tag. The time my mother told me she couldn't help me move because she had plans, and 3 days later, I found out she'd helped Ryan pack an entire apartment. The birthday where my gift was a candle and Ryan's was a laptop. The graduation she attended late and left early, claiming traffic. When I found out 2 years later she'd stopped for lunch with her friends on the way. I had always told myself it was not about money. I had always told myself that love was not a transaction and that I should not measure affection in dollars. I still believe that. But there is a difference between a parent who loves one child more and a parent who takes money that was meant for their daughter and uses it to build a better life for their son. That is not a personality flaw. That is a choice. A deliberate, documented, legally actionable choice. Saturday evening, I arrived at the restaurant first. Ryan came in 2 minutes after me. We sat on the same side of the table, which my mother noticed immediately when she walked in, because she was the kind of person who read rooms and adjusted accordingly. I watched her eyes move from Ryan's face to mine, to the folder I had placed on the table beside my water glass, and I watched something flicker in her expression before she smoothed it over and smiled. "This is nice," she said, pulling off her coat. "We haven't all been to dinner in ages." My father sat down. He ordered a scotch before the waitress had even finished introducing herself. We made small talk for approximately 4 minutes. I know because I was watching the time. Then I put the folder on the table. "I need to talk about Grandma's estate," I said. My mother looked at the folder and then looked at me. Her expression didn't break, but it shifted, just slightly, the way ice shifts when the temperature drops 1 more degree. "What about it?" she said. "Douglas Mercer contacted me 8 weeks ago. He audited the estate files and found that the account my inheritance was wired to was never in my name." I opened the folder. I slid the first page toward them. "I'd like you to explain that." My father picked up his scotch. My mother looked at the page for a long time without touching it. "Sarah," she said, and her voice had taken on that particular tone she had, the one that implied I was being unreasonable before I finished the sentence. "This is not the place for. I've been waiting 8 weeks," I said. "I've been patient. I'm asking you a direct question, and I'd like a direct answer. You received your inheritance. We distributed everything according to your grandmother's wishes." "That is not true," I said, "and we both know it's not true." My father put his glass down. He and my mother exchanged a look that I had been watching them exchange my whole life, the one that meant they were coordinating, the one that meant I was outnumbered, except this time Ryan was sitting next to me, and when my father glanced at his son expecting the usual alliance, Ryan looked back at him with an expression I had never seen on my brother's face before. Flat. Waiting. "Ryan," my mother started. "I want to hear the answer too," Ryan said. There were 30 seconds of silence at a white tablecloth table in a nice restaurant in Columbus, Ohio, and in those 30 seconds I watched my parents make the calculation they had been making my whole life. What is the cost of the truth, and is there a version of this we can still manage? My mother spoke first. "Things were very difficult at the time," she said. "After your grandmother passed, we were dealing with grief, and your father's company had been struggling, and Ryan needed—" "Don't," I said. "Please don't make Ryan the reason. He didn't ask you to do this." "He didn't know. We always intended to pay it back," my father said. It was the first time either of them had admitted that there was something to pay back. I saw Ryan's jaw tighten beside me. "You intended to pay back $240,000, I said. "Over 8 years. While I was working nights. While I was eating cereal for dinner. While you were calling me to tell me about Ryan's promotion. That is not fair. Do you know what I could have done with that money?" I asked, and my voice stayed even, which surprised me because inside I was somewhere between devastation and a fury so cold it had become perfectly still. I could have bought a house. I could have paid off my loans. I could have taken a year and gone back to school. I could have had some margin. Do you have any idea what it's like to have no margin? To have nothing between you and disaster? My mother was quiet. "Your grandmother specifically chose an outside attorney," I said. "She specifically divided it equally. She did that because she knew you. She knew what you would do if she didn't protect me, and she tried to protect me, and she found a way around it anyway." My father stared at the table. "I want to know one thing," I said. "One honest answer. Not because it changes anything, but because I've been trying to understand my entire life. Why? Why was it always Ryan? What did I do?" The silence stretched. "You never needed anything," my mother said finally, and her voice was strange, almost wondering, like she was explaining something she had never articulated before. "You always managed. Ryan struggled. He needed more." "I didn't manage," I said. "I survived. That is not the same thing. And I survived because I had no choice, because you had already decided I was the one who didn't need help." Dinner ended shortly after that. There was no dramatic scene, no shouting. The waitress came by twice and we sent her away. Ryan paid the check because the rest of us seemed to have forgotten it existed. In the parking lot, my mother tried to hug me and I stepped back, not cruelly, just honestly, the way you step back from something that doesn't belong to you anymore. "We can fix this," she said. "You can't fix 29 years, I said, "but you can start with the money." In the weeks that followed, Douglas Mercer facilitated what he called an informal recovery process, which is a very calm way of saying that my parents were given the choice between signing a repayment agreement and facing formal legal action for estate fraud. My father's financial advisor confirmed what I had already suspected. There was not $240,000 sitting in an account somewhere, waiting to be returned. The money had been woven into a life. Tuition, mortgage payments, a kitchen renovation, a trip to Lisbon. What remained, the traceable portion, was $31,000. Ryan did something then that I did not expect and have not been able to stop thinking about. He came to me 2 weeks after the dinner and told me he had calculated his approximate benefit from money that had come through our parents during the years in question. He was not precise about it. He said he couldn't be precise because he hadn't known at the time what was his parents' money and what wasn't. But he put a number on what he thought was reasonable, and he said he wanted to make it right between us regardless of what our parents did or didn't do. I told him he didn't have to. He said he knew he didn't have to. He said he wanted to because we were the only family either of us was likely to have that was worth keeping. I thought about that for a long time. I did not take my parents to court. I want to be honest about that because I know some people will think I should have, and maybe they're right. Douglas Mercer told me I had a case. He told me estate fraud is taken seriously and that the documentation was clear. I sat with that option for 3 weeks and I turned it over from every angle I could reach. Here is what I kept coming back to. A lawsuit would take years. It would cost money I didn't have. And at the end of it, I would get back a portion of something that was already spent from people who did not have $240,000 sitting in an account. My grandmother left me that money because she wanted my life to be easier. I don't think she would have wanted me to spend the next 3 years of my life in litigation, in depositions, in the particular kind of exhaustion that comes from fighting people who raised you. What I wanted was not justice in a courtroom. What I wanted was acknowledgement. The specific acknowledgement that what happened to me was real, was deliberate, and was wrong. I got that at a dinner table in a restaurant with white tablecloths, when my mother said I didn't need anything and I watched my father stare at his hands instead of looking at me. My parents signed the repayment agreement. They are paying back what's left, $31,000 in structured payments, with interest, documented and enforceable. Ryan and I worked out our own arrangement privately, between siblings, the way things probably should have been handled from the beginning. I still live in my one-bedroom apartment. I still drive the Honda with the cracked bumper. But I paid off one of my smaller loans last month, and I opened an investment account with money that belonged to me and was finally in my hands. And I sat with my laptop on a Tuesday evening and felt something I hadn't felt in a very long time. Not happiness, exactly. More like the particular relief of solid ground. I have not spoken to my mother since the dinner. I have not been ready, and I've given myself permission to not be ready. She called once, left a voicemail that started with, "I know you're upset," which is the thing people say when they want credit for acknowledging your feelings without actually taking responsibility for causing them. I listened to it twice and then I deleted it. What I keep returning to is my grandmother. She went to an outside attorney. She specified equal distribution. She worried enough about what would happen to me that she took steps to protect me from the people who were supposed to be doing that job already. She loved me in a way that was active and concrete and careful, even from a distance. Even knowing what she was working against. I think about her a lot. I think about the version of my 20s that could have existed, with a little margin, a little room to breathe, a little less constant arithmetic. I grieve that version sometimes. I think I'm allowed to. But I'm also 30 years old now, and I'm still here, and the ground is a little more solid than it was 6 months ago. My brother calls every Sunday. He sounds different on the phone lately, more careful, more present. We talk about his kids and my patients, and sometimes, not often, but sometimes, we talk about what it means to move forward when moving forward doesn't mean pretending none of it happened. It means knowing what happened, clearly and completely, and choosing to keep going anyway. It means understanding that the people who were supposed to carry you sometimes set you down and walk ahead, and it hurts, and it changes you, and it does not have to be the last word. My grandmother tried to give me a foundation. It got taken. But I'm building one myself, the same way I built everything else. Slowly, carefully, with tired hands and very clear eyes. And this time, nobody else holds the deed.